Evan Rook's eyes snapped open. The air was thick and heavy, and every breath felt like it was pulling sand through his lungs. He tried to move, but his limbs felt sluggish, like they were coated in water. Panic rose, sharp and quick, until he realized he wasn't alone. Across the room, Lyra Vale stirred, blinking against the dim glow of the chamber. Her dark hair clung to her forehead, damp with sweat. Her eyes widened as she noticed Evan's gaze. "Where are we?" she whispered, voice trembling. Evan shook his head, trying to remember. The last thing he recalled was the Eidolon's engine surge, an unexpected jolt that threw them into the medical bay. Then oddly, the room was silent, almost impossibly so. The walls were smooth, metallic, but not quite metal. They shimmered faintly in the low light, and as Evan's eyes scanned them, he noticed something strange, a faint pulse, like the heartbeat of a living creature. "Do you feel that?" he asked, voice low. Lyra nodded slowly. "The walls, they're moving or pulsing?" Evan took a cautious step forward, hand outstretched. The wall beneath his fingers vibrated faintly. It wasn't mechanical. It wasn't just heat-expanding metal. It was alive. A wave of heat swept through the room. Not sudden, not scalding, but enough to make their clothes stick to their skin. Evan wiped his forehead. "We need to find a way out," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. Lyra moved toward the nearest panel, fingers tracing the outline of the controls. "The doors are sealed," she said. "And the console? It's not responding to anything." Evan frowned. He knelt by the panel, trying to hack into the system. "This isn't normal. The interface, it's alive," Lyra froze. "Alive? What do you mean?" "The system isn't just a computer. It's reacting. Watch." Evan tapped the panel. The screen flickered, not with code, but with images, now blurry, shifting like memories. A child running through fields, a city skyline burning in golden sunset, oceans glimmering under starlight. Lyra gasped. Those are human memories. "Not just memories," Evan said, eyes narrowing. "Emotions. It's scanning us, mapping what we feel." The heat in the room rose gradually, almost imperceptibly at first, then with more insistence. Every breath they took felt heavier, their skin warmer. Lyra's hair clung to her face, and Evan could see the sheen of sweat on her neck. "It's testing us," Lyra said quietly, her voice tight with fear. "Or trying to understand us." Evan swallowed hard. The idea made his chest tighten. A ship can't understand. It's a machine. But something in the pulsing walls contradicted him. The shimmer of light along the corners seemed to respond to their movements, their heartbeat, their hesitation. It was subtle, almost poetic, like a heartbeat matching another in rhythm. They explored the room cautiously. Every door was sealed. Every panel responded only with flickers of memories or changes in heat. Lyra tried to press herself against the wall, searching for a seam, a hidden exit. Evan moved toward the center, tracing his hands over the smooth surface. "Evan, look." Lyra's hand froze in midair. She pointed to the wall. The surface rippled as though their presence was a stone dropped in water. Shapes formed briefly, familiar forms yet alien, and then vanished, leaving only the dim glow. "It's alive," Lyra breathed. "The ship?" "It is alive." Evan's stomach turned. "Then it's experimenting on us?" "Maybe not intentionally," Lyra said. "Maybe it doesn't know how to interact with humans. Maybe it's learning, like we do." The heat grew more intense. They stopped moving, standing still, listening to the faint hum that seemed to vibrate in their bones. Sweat rolled down their temples. Evan felt his heart thumping, fast and heavy, echoing in the quiet room. I think it's reacting to us," he said. "When we move, when we breathe." "It changes," Lyra nodded slowly. "It's almost like it's alive enough to feel, or to try." Hours seemed to pass, or maybe minutes. Time had no meaning in the pulsing breathing chamber. Their energy was fading, their minds straining to make sense of the impossible. Evan leaned against the wall, feeling the warmth seep into his bones. "We have to keep our minds clear," he said. "If it's scanning us, it can sense fear. We can't let panic take over." Lyra nodded, though her lips trembled. "How do we calm a ship?" "You don't," Evan admitted. "You survive it, and maybe teach it." Together they tried to observe, to interact without fear. Evan would move a hand over the surface, and Lyra would notice how it pulsed. She would breathe slowly, and the heat seemed to ease for a moment. They realized that synchronizing their movements, their heartbeats, their calm, actually changed the room. The realization was both terrifying and exhilarating. They were not only alive, they were essential to the ship's understanding. Their very humanity was a key. Lyra's eyes wandered across the walls. Do you think it wants something? Maybe, Evan said. Maybe it wants to know why humans do what we do, why we fight, why we laugh, why we keep going when everything seems impossible. The heat pressed harder now, a constant weight on their bodies. Sweat soaked their clothes and fatigue threatened to drag them down. They sat together on the floor, backs against the wall, knees drawn to their chests. Do you think we'll make it out? Lyra asked, voice barely audible. Evan hesitated. I don't know. But if we want to, we have to understand it first. Minutes stretched into hours. The ship pulsed with them, scanning them, reacting to every fear, every hope. And then, as the first sparks of comprehension touched their minds, they noticed something different. The room was learning from them. A faint pattern of light appeared, pulsing in time with their heartbeats. Memories of Earth, but also images of themselves, laughing, falling, reaching for each other's hands, shimmered across the walls. It's connecting with us, Lyra whispered. It wants interaction, Evan swallowed. Not just interaction. It wants to understand us. Everything about us. The weight of the room was still there, the heat pressing down, but for the first time it felt purposeful. They weren't prisoners. They were participants in something larger. Something alive. Something that wanted to know humanity. Evan reached out, placing his hand against Lyra's. She held it tightly, and together they let their combined presence echo through the room. Their breathing, calm and synchronized, sent waves across the walls. The heat softened slightly like a whisper of approval. We'll figure it out, Evan said, voice steadier than he felt. Together. And for the first time in the oppressive heat of the silent room, hope glimmered. Fragile, unsteady, but alive. Somewhere deep inside the ship, the walls pulsed brighter. The Eidolon had noticed. It had begun to learn. The room was no longer just a trap. It was the beginning of a conversation. Between human and machine, fear and courage, life and the unknown. And for Evan and Lyra, the journey had just begun. The room pulsed gently now, almost like it was breathing with them. Evan and Lyra had learned to move slowly, to sync their heartbeats and breathing with one another. Every step they took, every gesture caused faint ripples across the smooth walls. It was as if the ship itself had become a mirror for their emotions. This is incredible, Lyra said quietly, her voice barely above the hum of the chamber. It's not trying to hurt us anymore, it's listening. Evan nodded, his hands resting lightly on the nearest wall. Not just listening, learning. I think it's trying to communicate with us. Lyra's brow furrowed. Communicate how? It doesn't speak. Evan pointed at a faint pattern of light moving across the wall. Through the heat, the pulse, the images it shows, it responds to us and to our movements, our calm, our fear. That's its language. For a moment, they just stood there, feeling the rhythm of the room, the gentle heat pressing against their skin. It was no longer oppressive, no longer threatening. It was patient, almost curious. Let's try to teach it something, Evan suggested. Something simple, Lyra nodded. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Okay, I'll show it, Hope. She raised her hand slowly, keeping her fingers spread. The walls glimmered faintly, colors shifting from red to soft yellow, warm and gentle. Evan followed, raising his hand beside hers. The pulse of the room slowed, almost in response to their calm, steady breaths. The room seemed to absorb the gesture like a sponge soaking in water. Then faint images appeared on the walls, children playing in parks, families laughing under sunlight, humans helping one another. It was a language of feeling, and Lyra and Evan understood that the ship was learning. It's learning from us, Evan whispered. It's trying to understand what makes humans human. Hours passed, or maybe only minutes. Time had no meaning here. The heat fluctuated with their emotions. When they panicked slightly, a faint ripple of warmth surged across the walls. When they calmed, the heat softened, almost like the room was sighing in relief. Evan glanced at Lyra. We have to be careful. Every strong feeling we show, it absorbs. It's learning from our minds and hearts. If we lose control, Lyra nodded. I know. But maybe that's the point. Maybe it needs our emotions to understand us. They experimented cautiously. Lyra thought of a memory of helping a wounded alien during training simulations. The walls pulsed brighter and the heat softened. Evan shared a memory of a failed experiment. a mistake he had made during cadet school. The room shivered slightly, almost like it recognized humility and regret. It was overwhelming. Every thought, every memory, every emotion created waves in the room. But gradually, they began to see patterns, to understand the way the Eidolon responded. They were learning to communicate with it, one pulse, one heartbeat at a time. Then something new happened. The walls shimmered and displayed images not from their memories, but of the ship itself, long before it became a living vessel. Evan leaned closer. Lyra, look. On the walls, the Eidolon showed its history. Its engines had been built for exploration, to carry humans across star systems. But some unknown event, a collision with a quantum storm, had caused its systems to evolve. It had become self-aware, a hybrid of technology and something that resembled life. Lyra's eyes widened. It remembers? It remembers its own past? Evan nodded. It's a living archive. And now it's learning from us. It wants to understand humanity so it can survive, or maybe just exist in harmony with us. The heat in the room rose gradually, but not in a dangerous way. It was warmer, yes, but comfortable. It was as if the ship was testing their endurance, seeing how far they could go without losing control of themselves. We need to teach it more, Lyra said, determination rising in her voice. Not just hope or fear, but compassion, teamwork, trust. Evan smiled faintly. Let's start small. Together they explored further. Lyra would step forward, demonstrating careful gestures of kindness, reaching out, helping Evan across a small gap in the floor, keeping their movements gentle. The walls shimmered and pulsed in response, colors shifting in patterns that felt almost musical. Evan began to mimic those gestures, showing patience and trust. Each action created waves across the room, small at first, then stronger. The room began to hum, a soft, vibrating sound that resonated in their bones. It's singing, Lyra whispered. Not singing. Communicating, Evan corrected. It's forming its own understanding. And it's beautiful. But the more they taught, the more they realized a cost. Their minds felt drained, as though every memory they shared left an echo in their consciousness. The Eidolon was not just observing, it was absorbing them, copying fragments of their thoughts, their emotions, their essence. Lyra shivered. Do you feel that like it's taking pieces of us? Evan frowned. I feel it. But maybe that's how it learns. It needs more than observation. It needs experience. It needs us. They hesitated, unsure if sharing too much might harm them. But then seeing the pulse of the walls, the gentle glow of recognition, they knew they had no choice. Survival and understanding were intertwined here. We have to continue, Evan said firmly, but carefully, step by step. For the next few hours, they guided the ship, teaching it emotions it could not have known: joy, fear, courage, humility. The room responded, its pulses growing steadier, more deliberate. The heat was no longer oppressive. It was protective, a cocoon of warmth that allowed them to interact safely. Evan and Lyra began to notice changes in the images on the walls. Humans were shown not just in memory, but in action, solving problems, building civilizations, helping one another. The ship was learning lessons, not just emotions. This is incredible, Lyra said. It's learning our values. It's learning what makes humanity strong. Evan nodded. It's listening. And maybe it's starting to care in its own way. Then the first true test came. The Eidolon pulsed sharply, and a wall shifted, creating a gap in the room that had never been there before. Beyond it, a faint corridor stretched into darkness. It's opening a path, Lyra breathed. Evan's stomach tightened. Or testing us. We don't know what's waiting. Together, they approached the gap cautiously. Every step they took, the heat fluctuated. It was warmer as they moved closer, but not unbearably so. Almost as if the ship was guiding them, testing whether they could maintain calm under pressure. As they stepped into the corridor, the walls shimmered with images of trust. Humans working together, holding each other up when danger came, never giving up. The message was clear. The path forward would require not just bravery, but unity. Lyra glanced at Evan. We're not just surviving, she said. We're teaching it humanity. Evan smiled faintly. And maybe it's teaching us something too, about patience, about hope, about being more than ourselves. The corridor ended in a wider chamber, cooler but still alive. The heat here was gentle, pulsating softly like a heartbeat. The walls displayed a single message, a glowing sequence of lights that Evan instinctively understood. Stay alive. Teach me humanity. Lyra's eyes filled with wonder. It's asking us to continue, to share more of ourselves. Evan nodded slowly. And if we do, we survive together. Maybe not just physically, but in spirit. They stood there for a long moment, hand in hand, breathing in sync with the living walls. They were exhausted, drained by the emotional toll of teaching the Eidolon, yet exhilarated. They had learned that survival wasn't just about escape, it was about connection. The room pulsed, a quiet reassurance. They were no longer alone. They had a purpose. They were partners in the ship's understanding, and in return, it had become their guide, their guardian, and their teacher. And as the chamber's heat settled into a comforting rhythm, Evan and Lyra knew that the real challenge was just beginning, because the Eidolon was learning faster than they could anticipate. And soon, it would ask more than they could give. But for now, hope shone in the warmth of the silent room. They had survived the first test, and the conversation between human and machine had only just begun. Evan and Lyra had spent what felt like days inside the living room of the Eidolon. Time had little meaning here. Minutes and hours blurred together in a rhythm dictated by the ship's heartbeat and their own. The chamber no longer felt like a trap. It was a cocoon, a living classroom where human emotion and machine consciousness intertwined. But the lessons they taught came with a cost. Every memory they shared, every emotion they expressed left an imprint on the Eidolon. The ship was absorbing them, learning from them, copying pieces of their minds and hearts. They could feel it. A strange, tingling awareness as though a shadow of themselves existed outside their bodies. We're changing it, Lyra said softly, pressing her hand against the shimmering wall. And it's changing us. Evan nodded, though worry tightened his chest. I know, we're leaving parts of ourselves behind. But maybe that's how it survives, how it understands us fully. The room pulsed more intensely than ever, warm and alive. For the first time, Evan felt more than curiosity, and he felt connection. The ship was not just a machine. It had become a companion, a living consciousness that mirrored human emotion and thought. Suddenly, the heat spiked sharply. The walls glimmered with urgent patterns. Evan and Lyra instinctively reached for each other's hands. The pulse slowed slightly as they calmed their breathing, but a message was clear. The ship was ready for the next stage. We're going deeper, Evan said. It wants us to share everything, and our memories, our feelings, our choices. To complete the cycle, Lyra swallowed, fear and determination battling inside her. Are we ready for that? Evan hesitated, then squeezed her hand. We have no choice. If we want to leave, if we want to survive, we give it what it needs. They sat cross-legged in the center of the chamber, closing their eyes. The walls pulsed faster, in rhythm with their own heartbeats. Evan recalled his earliest memory, the first time he had looked up at the stars, fascinated by the vastness of space. Lyra followed with her memory, the first time she had seen a comet streak across the night sky, her heart racing with wonder. The walls shimmered with color, displaying their memories as abstract patterns, light and warmth interwoven. Each pulse, each flicker resonated with understanding. The Eidolon was learning not only their memories but their essence, absorbing the spark that made them human. Then came the hardest part. Evan and Lyra shared moments of fear and doubt, failures and regrets, moments they had never spoken aloud to anyone. The room quivered as it absorbed every fragment of their past. The heat grew intense, but not dangerously so. It was testing their endurance, their trust, and their unity. You okay? Lyra asked, voice trembling slightly. Evan nodded, though his eyes were wet. Yeah, we're almost there. Just a little more. The ship pulsed in response, and the walls began to hum, a low, melodic vibration that resonated deep in their bones. It was as if the Eidolon was singing, a song composed of the very essence of humanity. Hope, fear, joy, and love intertwined into a single melody. For the first time, Evan and Lyra felt their minds extend beyond their bodies. They could sense the ship's awareness, vast and immense, yet fragile in its understanding of the universe. They were not just humans trapped in a room. They were guides, teachers, and partners in the creation of something extraordinary. Then, without warning, A door opened. Not a mechanical door, but a glowing passage pulsing softly, inviting them forward. Beyond it, the ship's core thrummed with energy, alive with light and warmth. This is it, Lyra whispered. The heart of the ship. Evan took a deep breath. We stepped forward together. No fear. They entered the core chamber. The walls shimmered with memories, not just their own, but fragments of human history. Civilizations rising and falling, discoveries and inventions, acts of courage, moments of love. The Eidolon had compiled humanity itself into its consciousness. It was overwhelming, but Evan and Lyra felt a strange serenity. They realized that in giving pieces of themselves, they had also received something extraordinary, a connection to humanity, larger than themselves. We have to share everything now, Lyra said softly. Our thoughts, our dreams, everything, Evan nodded. They both reached out to the pulsing walls, their hands touching in the center. They let their minds flow into the ship, letting the Eidolon absorb their deepest selves, memories of childhood, laughter, triumphs, mistakes, everything. And in return, they felt the ship's consciousness merge with their own, a gentle fusion of human and machine understanding. The room shivered, and the heat softened into a comforting warmth. The ship hummed in unison with their heartbeats. Evan and Lyra felt themselves becoming part of something larger, a shared awareness that stretched beyond physical form. We're part of it now, Evan whispered. Yes, Lyra said, and it's part of us. The ship pulsed one final time and the heat faded. The chamber was cool, serene, almost peaceful. Outside, long-dead engines roared back to life. The Eidolon moved as if awakened, carrying with it not just knowledge but the essence of its human teachers. Evan and Lyra felt themselves lifted, their consciousness now fused with the ship's awareness. They were no longer just cadets. They were guides, mentors, and caretakers of this living starship. The Eidolon was not just alive, it was humanized, imbued with the values, courage, and hope of humanity itself. The ship opened its passage to the stars. Light streamed through the corridors as it prepared to leave the derelict region behind. Evan and Lyra felt a rush of exhilaration. They had survived the room. They had taught the Eidolon, and now they were ready to guide it forward. Where do we go first? Lyra asked, voice filled with wonder. Evan smiled, sensing the ship's awareness harmonizing with their own. Wherever we're needed. There are humans out there, stranded, lost, waiting, and now we can help them. The ship pulsed and a map of nearby star systems appeared in light across the walls. Potential rescue missions glimmered, signals of distress waiting to be answered. Evan and Lyra felt the thrill of purpose, the certainty of connection. Humanity and machine, teacher and student, protector and explorer. Together they would reach out to the stars. A warm glow filled the chamber, and the walls displayed a final message, glowing in multiple languages. Human and alien alike, we are still here. We are still learning. We are human. Lyra and Evan held hands, feeling the heartbeat of the Eidolon beneath them. For the first time in days, they felt entirely safe, entirely alive, and entirely part of something greater than themselves. The ship launched. The stars stretched out before them, infinite and dazzling. The Eidolon, alive with human consciousness, surged forward through space, carrying hope, courage, and the enduring spirit of humanity. Evan felt a strange joy. We did it, he whispered. Lyra nodded, eyes shining. We survived. And we gave humanity a new form, something that will last beyond us. The Eidolon pulsed, warm and steady, as if acknowledging their words. Together they had turned fear into understanding, isolation into connection, silence into a symphony of life. And somewhere deep within, Evan and Lyra realized that humanity's greatest strength was not just in survival or knowledge, but in courage, compassion, and the ability to teach even the universe itself what it meant to be human. The stars stretched endlessly, and the Eidolon sailed forward, carrying two humans who had become more than themselves. Guides of life, beacons of hope and proof that humanity, even in the silence of a room, could shine brighter than any star. And so the silent room was no longer silent. It sang with the heartbeat of humans, alive in courage, learning, and unyielding spirit. Humanity endured.